A pleasant day, everyone. I am Mary Cristel Perpenosas, presenting the Lesson 3 Theories in Language and Culture. Do you believe that language and culture are interconnected? This can be proven by idioms. According to the dictionary, idioms is a term whose meaning cannot be determined from the literal meanings of the words it is made of. It is a widely used saying or expression that contains a figurative meaning that is different from phrase's literal meaning. We use idiom in our natural conversations. There are words or phrases which should not be taken literally. Idioms are very cultural as they are formed from experiences. When one is a master of idioms, we can conclude that he or she is a master of language. These are the examples of idioms. Break a leg means to wish someone luck. This phrase does not mean to break someone's leg. The second example is once in a blue moon. If you are able to understand this phrase, then you'll know that its meaning is rarely or something that doesn't happen often. The third example is take it with a pinch of salt. It means don't take it seriously. At this moment, we will discuss the interconnectedness between language and culture. But before discussing that, we should define first the language and culture. According to Byram 2008, culture is defined as shared beliefs, values, and behaviors of a social group, while the language as defined by Crumbs 2002 is not used not just a tool for the exchange of information, but as a symbolic system with the power to create and shape symbolic realities, such as values, perceptions, identities through discourse. We can view the interrelatedness between culture and language in these three opposing aspects. The first aspect is language and culture are inseparable since language is closely related to culture. A particular language points to the culture of a particular social group. Learning a language, therefore, is not only learning the alphabet, the meaning, the grammar rules, and the arrangement of words, but it is also learning the behavior of the society and its cultural customs. The second aspect is language and culture are independent because speech is a means of exchanging information which can be used in aspects that are not connected to culture. This could probably mean that not everything on language is about culture and not everything in the culture focuses on language, but it does not mean that one can exist without the other. The third aspect states that culture and language are partly interconnected. Culture and language are inextricably linked. You can't understand a culture without first learning a language. A specific language is usually associated with a particular group of people. You interact with the culture of the language's speaker when you communicate in their language. Claire Crumbs pointed three ways by which language and culture are related. The first way is that ways of doing things and perception can be manifested through the use and arrangement of words. Considering this, people in society convey culture. The second is people postulate meaning in their daily activities and experiences through language, and thus language personifies cultural reality. The third one is the context of communication where language is used embodies cultural reality and speakers distinguish themselves using their language as their identity. These three statements shows that the relation of culture and language is the way they share human values, realities, and behaviors of a social group. As a conclusion, according to Crumbs, language expresses, embodies, and symbolizes cultural reality. It is a tool for people to express themselves and put significance on their social and cultural experiences and reality with others. Now let's move to culture as part of language. Edward Sapir states that language is a purely human and non-instinctive method of communicating ideas, emotions, and desires, means of voluntarily produced symbols. According to him, These symbols are in the first instance auditory and they are produced by the so-called organs of speech. Speech is a human activity that varies without assignable limit as we pass from social group to social group, because it is a purely historical heritage of the group, the product of long-continued social usage. Karen Risiger claims that language is a part of culture and a part of epidermal behavior. It is predominantly held that the task of language is to put thoughts into words, to communicate pieces of information, and to express feelings. Language fulfills many other functions, as maintaining a friendly societal relationship between people, such as greeting, expressing words, and etc. In this area of study, Crumbs praised the main function of language in three aspects. The first one is language is the primary vehicle of communication. The second statement is language reflects both the personality of the individual and the culture of history. In turn, it helps in shaping both personality and culture. The third aspect states that language makes possible the growth and transmission of culture, the continuity of society, and the effective functioning and control of social groups. These three aspects tells us that if we endeavor to learn a foreign language, we need to be acquainted with the cultural realities embedded in this foreign language. There must be a distinct way of respecting or expressing gratitude and other appropriate ways of transacting. This will be the end of my report, and the continuation of the lesson 3 will be presented by Miss Kent Sahulga.
Hi, good day everyone. I am Kental Sahulga and I am the last reporter for this group. So today we're going to discuss the remaining topic and the continuation of lesson 3, theories in language and culture. So without further ado, let's begin. First, we have language, thoughts, and culture. Benjamin Lee Worth shared his theory on the significance of language in organizing our thoughts. He exposed that our ways of looking at the world depend on the type of language that we use. His example is on the word snow. The word may mean differently to an English person and an Eskimo person who may have 50 ways to describe the snow. So, to what extent does language influence how we think and how we perceive the social and physical worlds? People cannot easily understand concept and object unless their language contains words for these items. They explained that language structures thought. Language does influence how we understand the world around us. So, katong example kanina ni Benjamin Lee Worth is the same hold the truth for Bisaya or the Cebuano language. Sa Bisaya, there are more than words to mean eat, or sabi ni Saya, pagkaon. We have a term painit, pamahaw, hab-hab, sima-sima, timo, and etc. So therefore, the language is very cultural. The Cebuano words for eat basically tells that culturally, kita nga mga Bisaya have different ways and practices for eating as represented by the who of the meaning of those words. So what is really the connection of language, thoughts, and culture? Or what is the relationship between them? So language and thoughts includes an element that builds a culture. When compared, the language and culture are two different sides of coins, but it cannot be separated because language is a reflection of the culture and the thought identify of the speakers. Makaingon gud ta nga konektado ang atong language, thoughts, and culture due to the fact nga mauni usa sa rason nganong ma-identify kung asa tagagikan. Say for example, mo adto tag Manila, then makabalo ang mga people in that community that you are a Bisaya. So they will immediately think that you are from Mindanao or Visayas. naka-impluwensya gyud pod ang culture sa atong language ug panghuna-huna. It is because if we grow up in that particular community, magdako sad ta nga ginasunod ang ilang culture or even ang language ato pod na siyang ma-adapt. In other words, the influence of language isn't so much on what we think or what we can think about or even what we do think about, rather on how we break up the reality that our language and our thoughts are probably both greatly influenced by our culture. Now, let's move on to culture and its elements. It is undeniable that we learn culture through interactions with people. Culture is not inborn, but rather learned as it is a social product. Words are the best tools of cultural symbols, such as epics, myths, and stories. This helps connect people. Aside from words or language, rituals, beliefs, and Voltaire are essential in the formation of culture. Generally, the elements of culture includes the overall patterns of behavior, literature, and language, prototypes, and other products, human work, and thought. So, culture was defined earlier as the symbols, language, beliefs, values, and material object that are part of the society. Culture is not really inborn. Tanan na katong mga atong beliefs, values, symbols, language, kay dili na siya inborn. Gibuhat na siya sa atong kanununuan and it passed generations through generations. So, kanya ang mga element sa culture can connect people. Diba? Every people in the community have different cultures. So, in that way, nadyo na siya mga elements. Say, for example, kanang symbols. Every culture has a symbols. Every culture is filled with symbols or kanang things that stand for something else and that often evoke various reactions and emotion. Some symbols are actually nonverbal and while other symbols are in fact material object. So, let's look at nonverbal symbol first. A common one here in the Philippines is kanang pagmamano. We use pagmamano for paying respect to the elders. It's commonly conveys na we respect the elders. So, mauna to, no? Probably, all societies have non-verbal symbol. We call it gestures or movements. However, the same gestures can mean nothing sa ubang lugar, ay sa ubang malagi sa ubang lugar sa labaw na sa kanang sa gawas sa nasod kay wala man sila ing ana, wala man sila culture nga kanang pagmamano paying respect for elders. Lahi po dito ilaha, lahi po ang ilahang showing of respect to their elders. So, ingana ragod ang mga elements sa culture is dili po tanan pare-pareha. Another kanang language. Perhaps the most important set of symbols is kanang language. Dire sa Bisaya, for example dire sa Bisaya kay ang word nga langgam sa ato kay kanang galupad. It's a bird. But in Manila, in Tagalog, ang langgam means ant or alamigas. So, nga no, kanang lahi ang atong language, lahi po datong pag-interpret. By the same token, difference in language can make it quite difficult to communicate. Another example kanang, imagine if you are in a foreign country where you do not know the language and the country's citizen do not know yours. Worse yet, you forgot your dictionary, you forgot your phone, lubat imong phone, then wala kay pang translate, you become lost. How will you get help what will you do? Is there any way to communicate? When kanang the universal language, English. Pero what if dili pud sila kasabot og English? So, as this scenario suggested, language is crucial to communication and thus to any society's culture. Children learns language from their culture just as they learn about shaking hands, about gestures, and about significance of the flag and other symbols. So humans have a capacity for language that no other animal species possesses. Our capacity for language in turn help make our complex culture possible. To sum it up, culture and its element is important. It will help us to be recognized and to understand other people's culture. And now let's move on to Vygotsky's theory. Lev Vygotsky, a psychologist, believed that social interactions between and among people are a key element in acquiring knowledge, just like how a child watches and learns from adults. The more experience a child has to imitate, the greater his intellectual skills and language development compared to those with less experience and exposure. Moreover, language and culture are intently interconnected. He believed that every culture has specific dynamics for social transactions. Lev Vygotsky said that language and cultural connections precede learning and cognitive development. According to him, social interactions between people, watching and learning from other speakers, is how a child acquires knowledge or anyone learning a language. For this reason, some children come to school with more cognitive skills because of the culture and environment they live in and the language model they had around them. The more experience children have to watch and model behavior, the greater their cognitive skills and language. Also, Vygotsky believed that each culture has specific tools that are used for social interactions and are specific to each culture. Next, we have Piaget's theory. Jean Piaget contends that when children are born, they have an embedded basic structure for cognition as well as for language. As they mature, their built-in structure also adjusts to let them learn more about complex language and other higher-order concepts. In this theory, Piaget stressed that children create meaning from the verbal and non-verbal cues received from their environment, and these meanings change as children learn more because of maturity. Piaget did not adhere to Vygotsky's idea of emphasizing culture in learning. So, Piaget believed that all children are born with a basic structure for language and cognition, and as children develop, they are able to learn more complex language and concept. In Piaget's theory, children construct both verbal and non-verbal meaning from their environment and culture. Those meanings change as children develop and mature. Piaget had definite age and stage for learning and believed that all children pass through each stage, although they may not all reach the next stage at the same time. So, in contrast to Vygotsky, Piaget believed that children are the most important part of their learning and did not place nearly as a great emphasis on the culture. And now let's move on to the last theory, which is Chomsky's theory. Noam Chomsky is known for his language acquisition device or LAD, which is built-in box in the brain responsible for creating and learning language. For him, practice is not important as children never acquire language through it. Furthermore, language structures can change, develop, and evolve given cultural instructions. So, Chomsky believed that children are born with all of the structure necessary to create language and that they instinctively know how to use them. Each child has the ability to acquire further language and structure because the categories of the language already exist within their brains. For Chomsky, children would never acquire language strictly from practice because language acquisition alone does not give a child the tool they need. So para kay Chomsky, ang language daw na nahibaw-an sa bata is dili na kinahanglan nga i-practice pa kay naka built-in na sa ilahang utok nga kato nga language nga mauto ang ilang nakasanayan nga language. The same basic language structure in children carries over if an adult seek to acquire another language. Language structure can get reset and evolve. Chomsky said that through cultural interactions, ma-evolve or ma-reset ang usa ka language. Napailayan mga language nga mahibaw-an ang usa ka bata. A single cultural shift could create change in language. So that's all for my report. I hope you learned something. Again, this is Kent Elsa Hulga, an aspiring future educator. Thank you, God bless, and stay safe.